Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Unlocking Compliance, Navigating California Bill 899. Today's webinar will be hosted by Grace Bandog, our Business Unit Manager in Contaminants who boasts over 30 years of experience in the food and supplement industry. She leads a team specializing in method development for emerging contaminants, and she holds degrees in chemistry from the University of the Philippines and the University of Houston. We are also joined today by Karen Breiterman, our Senior Director for Early Nutrition. Karen has spent nearly a decade with Eurofins and 17 years in the early nutrition industry. She is our expert in the chat today, so feel free to reach out with her with any questions you may have. My name is Drew Wellnitz, and I will be moderating today's webinar. That wraps up my brief introduction, and I'll pass it on over to you, Grace. You may begin your presentation.
Thank you, Drew, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us on the website and on the webinar, and I will get started. So today we are going to try to unlock compliance as we navigate the new California Bill 899. And as Drew said, I'm Grace Bandong, and I'm the lab director for our contaminants, inorganics, and pesticides lab at the Eurofins Food Chemistry Testing in Madison. So today what we're going to go through is we'll define and rediscover what the California AB number 899 bill is about. We'll go through definitions that's included in the bill, because the definitions actually will give us a clearer understanding of the bill and what the bill is asking us to do, go through the requirements and the timeline for meeting requirements. Before we go to that, just a quick background on heavy metals, and I'm pretty sure most of us are aware of all this, but that the exposure to heavy metals, there is quite a lot of sources for heavy metals contamination in our environment, in our food, and in the ecosystems that eventually end up into the humans. And the biggest concern for this too is that while we're looking at infants and babies, is that the impact of the toxins, the toxicity of the elements are increased based on the lesser the body weight. So there is a greater concern for the for babies and infants on the exposure on heavy metals. And as you can see from this slide, they come at us from everywhere. And so the aim of this talk is to also bring into light the exposure that we have for heavy metals. And so recent developments in the baby food, a few years back, the Baby Food Safety Act, this was from Congress, they sent recommendations for the levels of arsenic, of heavy metals in baby food and young children. As you can see, they've proposed cadmium at 5 ppb, lead 5 ppb, mercury 2, and inorganic arsenic at 10 ppb. But generally, it's based on, we tend to look at total arsenic and assume that if the total arsenic we get is lower than 15 ppb for cereals, that our inorganic arsenic should be lower also, and 10 ppb for non-cereal products. And the other things that we see is that the other recent development is the FDA's approach, a program called Closer to Zero. What is it that they're proposing processes and approaches that will allow us to continue monitor the levels of heavy metals, our exposure to heavy metals, but based on evaluating the current data that we have, the science that we have, And then based on that, to propose action levels or tolerable levels for these elements. And the first phase was focused on lead. And for lead, the proposed action levels was published in 2023. And I think in 2024, they are going to start, uh, that will be the final guidance. And the next to that is they're in 2024, they're working on arsenic and looking for action levels, draft action levels for that, and hopefully finalizing the guidance in 2025. And at the same time, the next would be cadmium and mercury. As they're working on lead and arsenic, we are continuing cadmium and mercury monitoring so that we have increased data. And at the bottom of this slide is a link to the FDA timeline for the Closer to Zero program that they have. So if you want to check out when they're proposing to have final levels for the elements. And then we go to the bill. The newest of this is the California Assembly Bill number 899. What is this bill? Just reading it off the slide, this bill would require a manufacturer of baby food for sale or distribution in this state, i.e. California, beginning on January 1, 2024. So it's already started. The requirement has started to test a representative sample of each production aggregate, which means a lot or batch number of the manufacturer's final baby food product at a proficient laboratory meeting certain criteria for toxic elements as defined by the bill, and we will get more into that later, at least once per month. So it's basically asking that all baby food, if you're planning to sell it in California, that you need to test it for the toxic elements as defined by the bill. And that's why it's important for us to just go through the definitions that's in the bill, because it clarifies a lot of this statement of the bill. Just the very abridged statement of the bill. So going through the definitions, first, baby food is described as anything that's packaged in jars, pouches, tubs, and boxes intended for babies and young children less than 2 years of age. But it also, the bill specifically excludes infant formula. So the focus in the food that after they outside of infant formula. And then the final baby food product, what they mean is that those are the finished product with a unique universal product code, each UPC. And it does not mean the ingredients. This is kind of like a departure or a difference from legacy or a testing which has focused on ingredients going into the baby food product. And then product label, I think we all know what the product label is, but it is the ones that we all see and the consumers see, which displays it's written, printed, or in pictures that is affixed to a product or its immediate container. As we are all familiar with, they usually tell us the name of the product, what's in the product, and all some nutritional facts about the product. And then the product shelf life. So that's the time in months between the date of manufacture and the expiration date. So that's what they are defining as the product shelf life. And next, when we read what the bill was about, they used the term production aggregate, which they define as a quantity of product that is intended to have uniform composition, character, and quality, and is produced according to a master manufacturing order. Most of us, or many of us, would probably look at that as a lot or a batch when we're producing it. So that's what where the testing is focused on the either a lot number or a batch number of the product aggregate. And then the representative sample is a sample that consists of a number of units that are drawn based on some rational criteria, such as random sampling, and intended to ensure that this sample accurately portrays the material being sampled. An example of this is usually you can either do random sample through the lot as you do it, or traditionally you could also do from beginning, middle, and end, and you do a composite of that so that you can comfortably consider that that is representative of the lot. And then the quick response, well, we all know is a QR code. Why they define that, why there's a specific definition for the quick response QR code will become important when we go to look at the requirements and what they expect us to do. And the last set of definition, which is probably the at the top of being critical, is the toxic elements. When they're talking about toxic elements, what are they referring to in this bill? I mean, because there are a lot of toxic elements out there, but the bill specifically refers to, when they say toxic elements, they mean arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. So I call this for the holy four or the top four, but arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury is what the bill pertains to. And then finally, the testing, they define that the testing needs to be done with a proficient laboratory. And they define a proficient laboratory as a lab that's ISO 17025 accredited, and you need to meet the limit of quantitation requirement, which is specified in the FDA element manual. And you need to participate in proficiency test and pass it with a Z-score of less than or equal to plus or minus 2. And that's that's an average expectation for proficiency testing. But when your Z-score is within that range, you're usually within, your data is acceptable, and that you fall within the what these multiple labs that do the proficiency test, you fall within that average or that range. And the limit of quantitation that's as defined by that FDA manual that is stated in the bill are as follows: for arsenic 11.6, cadmium 3.71, lead 10.9, mercury 7.82. And those numbers, as you know, they're not nice round numbers because they're based on data that was obtained from multi-lab validation for arsenic, cadmium, for the 4 elements. And however, for just going into, for what we do in our lab, using the LOQs that we've done, we've used for the baby food, there's a big difference. We've mimicked the LOQ needed for California 899, and just fall a little bit below the recommended limit of quant by the bill. So for arsenic, and we're talking about total arsenic, what we've gone to is 5 parts per billion for arsenic, 2 parts per billion for cadmium, 2 for lead, and 2 for mercury, which, going back to the limit of quant that's required by the bill, it meets, quite easily meets the requirement for the Bill 899. And the method that that manual also prescribes the method that a particular analytical method, and that's the one that's uses closed vessel microwave digestion and followed by ICP-MS determination of the elements. And so now that we've gone through those definitions, what's the requirement and the timeline for testing. As I've mentioned, the bill had already started, the requirement for the testing took effect for in January. So the testing for arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury for every unique product code, a UPC, at least once a month with a proficient lab and make the results available to government agencies on demand. That's a important part of this is the you need to have that data available when the regulatory agency knocks on your door and asks for those data. They hopefully you're prepared to show the testing that you've done of every UPC you have at least once a month, and they would like for you to make that available on demand. And coming up very soon, as of January 2025, they're asking that you test for arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury for every UPC you have at least once a month. The same thing, the testing. But in addition to that, they want the results of testing public on the manufacturer's website, and the information based on the product name, UPC size, lot numbers, or batch numbers. So what this means is, for example, a consumer takes a jar of carrot puree and has the lot number in there. They would want the expectation is that they should be able to go to the manufacturer's website, look up that lot number or that UPC number, and be able to find the testing results for lead, arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. And they want you to be able to do this. They're expecting that you do this, the manufacturers do this by January of 2025. And and then they have an additional requirement that if you're testing for elements with action levels or tolerance levels, for example, if for lead with the final guidance available, I think the final guidance should be available sometime this year. If for lead, they require that you have the QR code or other machine readable code that links to a page on the manufacturer's internet website containing all of the following information: the test results for the toxic element. So for lead, whatever you get, if it's less than 10 parts per billion, an internet website link to a website of the FDA where consumers can find the most recent FDA guidance and information about the health effects of the toxic element on children. So one of the usually if there's a action level and there's an FDA guidance for lead, that would be a good website to link it to. But that's what they're asking for you. The bill is asking you to do. So they have the QR code. They can have the level of lead that you found, and then a link so they could verify if this level that you found on this particular UPC, this particular lot or batch number, is within the guidance that FDA has provided. Plus, in addition, a statement that reads, for more information about toxic elements in this product, you can scan the QR code. So this is the added requirement for anything that has a action level or tolerance level. Currently, there are no tolerance levels available in the US that I know of for specifically for lead, cadmium, arsenic, and mercury on baby food. But I think the action level or the final guidance for lead is coming. And so and that QR code needs to be on that label on your product. And so in conclusion, the bill is very, it's very clear stepwise in what you need to do and what you need to provide, but it's asking you to focus monitoring testing on the 4 elements defined, and make sure that when you're testing, that you are testing to the required limit of quant that the bill has asked for, and that it's following the method that's provided for on that FDA manual, which in summary is just a method using microwave closed vessel digestion and ICP-MS, which allows, of course, for the lower LOQs, and then test on finished product per UPC. It's the focus of the bill is the finished product as it is delivered to the consumer, and the bill does not concern themselves on the ingredients. But of course, as a manufacturer, that is something that would be important, because you wouldn't want to use raw ingredients that would lead to a finished product that has the elements lead, cadmium, arsenic, or mercury at a level higher than the limit of quant that they prescribe. And then where a little bit more work is with the web development for availability of results, and so that for everybody to be able to just for elements that have the guidance, for them to just scan the QR code and then be led to all the information related to that toxic element, and what FDA's the FDA information in them, and some of the FDA data that would usually be available in those websites, so they could have an idea of how the toxic element that was found in the product, if it's there, relates to the rest of the data that FDA has and relates to the guidance. And so there's a few more months for baby food manufacturers to be able to come up with all this QR code and making them available to the public on the website. And that is basically AB 899. And I thank you for joining the webinar and for your attention, and we can take some questions.
All right, thank you, Grace, for your presentation. We'll now move into our Q&A portion. So our first question today is, the 2025 disclosure requirement is tied to the FDA publishing final action limits for toxic elements. As of now, there are no final limits, only guidance published. The first final limit is expected to be published in December 2024. So how are companies planning to comply, given the lead time required to update product labels?
I can speak to that, but Karen, would you like to speak to it as well?
You can certainly go ahead first, Grace, if you like, and I can add on to it.
So I think in preparation for that, then they wouldn't have, if there's a final guidance by December 2024, they could anticipate that, and so that they could just add the link at the end. But because if there's no guidance or there's no tolerance, there would not be a need for that QR code, is my interpretation.
All right, thank you. Our next question is, does this bill include dietary supplements for infants?
Yep, so I can take that one. Yeah, it's specific to food in pouches and tubs, etc. And dietary supplements is not considered a food, so no.
Thank you.
Grace, I presume you agree with that, hopefully. Yeah, okay.
Our next question is, how has Eurofins Madison accommodated for the large influx of samples expected as a result of this bill passing into law?
So in anticipation of this, that's my lab. So in anticipation of this law, well, even back in 2023, we worked at increasing our capacity. We increased our ICP-MS and our workforce, the resources, and we have And we've added quite a few microwaves to accommodate all this influx, and also to accommodate the a fast turnaround, because there's if you're required to do that monthly on every UPC, we anticipate that there would be a need to for faster testing of that, because there's just a lot that's happening. And we've done that, and we've done processes in our lab to increase throughput, and then we have done a lot of training for our staff.
Thank you. All right. Another question is, does the bill include drinks or powdered drinks marketed to toddlers?
I would believe it's in a tub or in pouches and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gray zone, because toddler formula kind of falls in between a baby food and an infant formula. I'm not 100% sure, because it would be in a tub and it is considered food. So maybe I can take that away. If whoever asked that question, if they want to reach out to me, I can take that away and get an answer for you if you want to reach out to me or to Grace on her email here, and we can come back to you on that one.
Sounds good. Another question is, would sample size matter?
So we don't need much sample size for our ICP-MS method. I think we take 2 grams, Grace, for this method.
Yes, we could just 2 grams, but sample size matters in the testing. So the sample weight that you take at the beginning of the testing matters, because of the sensitivity. The amount of sample that you start out with will affect the sensitivity of your method, plus also your ability to test for the elements without having any quote-unquote interference from the matrix.
All right.
Yeah, and I suppose also, yeah, I was just going to add, sorry, Drew. Also, if it's a very homogeneous matrix or not. So if it's not a homogeneous matrix, the bigger the sample size, the better we're going to be able to capture any heavy metals. And obviously, if it's a very, homogeneous kind of single ingredient type baby food, then we wouldn't need as much necessarily.
Thank you. Based on our timing, I'll take a few more questions here. The next question is, so the bill does not include infant formula. Do you expect infant formula to be included and required to meet the same requirements in the future?
Infant formula already has their own requirements for, I think it's the requirements for elements based on their contaminant requirements is actually a little bit more stringent than for the food. Karen?
Yeah, I would just add that I haven't heard any rumblings yet around a similar bill being passed in California for infant formula. Obviously, Prop 65 is out there, which does pertain to infant formula. So I'm hoping they don't, for your guys' sakes. But yeah, we'll definitely, keep on top of it if we hear things coming through from California or from the FDA, the government in general.
All right. And our last question here is, what if a product isn't manufactured monthly? Does it still require monthly testing?
I would say that it would require, when you're manufacturing it, within that month that you sample it. And if you're not manufacturing it, then you wouldn't need to be testing. If you're not releasing, I mean, if you only do it once every 3 months, then you only do it within that month that you're making it and releasing that particular UPC or lot that you have.
Thank you. All right. Based on our timing today, that will wrap up our Q&A section. Thank you, Grace, for your expertise and presentation, and thank you, Karen, for assisting today. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you.